Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 2023 Board of Education meeting. And so on finance, we have Larson, Scheckinger, and policy, Hazelton, Alberson, and Blatt. And Jade is here. Hey. Great. Glad to see you. So we will call the meeting to order and determine that we do have a quorum. I think Monty is up in Lamar's or something like that. Everyone else is here. Good to see everybody. And so the first thing here, we have this as a public forum, and we want to request if Catherine had anyone come in and request a
No, sir.
talk at the public forum. Nope. So we won't explain all that since it's not necessary, and we'll go right on to item C, to approve the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Next item is discussion items, and we'll turn it over to Superintendent Barnett.
Okay.
Do we want to vote on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. We want to vote on that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no? Okay.
Okay, well, we've got several people here to talk to tonight, so I'm not gonna say much, but Jeff, do you wanna even just talk about how the first of the year started so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been busy. It's a very busy time of year, obviously, for all teachers. At the elementary, we do a combination of nuts and bolts, if you will, and a combination of lots of adult learning. So we have what's called well-managed classrooms, is what we use as a building-wide, elementary-wide behavior modification plan, I guess, if you will, and it's through Boys Town. Two presenters from Boys Town came out, and we have a number of new staff members since our original training. So we got the whole new training, we got the same training again for all staff, so we did that one day. And then obviously we have new language arts materials that we spent some time on. And then letters stands for, I can't remember. It's spelled different than the actual word letters, but it's very explicit teaching of how the brain works in functioning and learning how to read and the phonemes behind it.
Science
and
behind it.
yeah, yep. So it's very, very in-depth, but we started that, so that was a whole day, professional development. Teachers have been great, you know, they're like sponges, but you know, it's go time, but everybody's been hanging in there well. Back to the registration's been a little change back to the way we used to do it. That's a little tougher this year, I think, because we're back to paper. So other than that, going great. Everybody's just been terrific. So an open house tomorrow night for the elementary. So
The goal will be to get back to electronic registration next year. Power School had lots of changes and we had lots of personnel changes, so once we get it all figured out and get it ready to go, then the goal will be to be back electronic, because paper is hard. Middle school and high school each have events tonight. High school has their new students, so freshman orientation, and middle school had an open house just this afternoon too, to just check your lockers out and things like that. So Casey and Bill are in the midst of that. But otherwise, I think we've had a good first few days. Lots of staff back, professional development for paras too, the cooks, and nutrition workers have been in, and they're going to have some training tomorrow as well. So I think we're all good. Custodians did a great job getting everything cleaned up, and really cleaned up the high school part that we weren't planning on having to clean up, and did a great job of doing that too. So
I would mention, if you don't mind, in case you guys get questions. So there's not much change due to construction at the elementary for pickup and drop off. So it's exactly the same way. They got all the concrete repoured because they had to dig up our driveway and stuff like that. So we're able to do exactly what we've done in the past with a couple of small. This doesn't impact pickup and drop off. But we have to have a hard surface area, which is now under construction. So we've commandeered the intermediate parking lot so kids have a place to play. We put the basketball hoops from the construction site over by the trees so that so we have a place on hard surface where they can shoot baskets and play when it's rainy and muddy. So we're taking that parking away, but we'll leave that parking open for the mornings, but then we're going to put like a chain or a rope across the drive. So after the parents drop off and leave, then we lock that off, so the parking lot will be off limits during the day for the most part. We're gonna have a few reserve parking for different things, but, so that's one, and then if you noticed, when you come up the drive past the Congregational Church, there's a new flat dirt surface there. Okay, so we wanted to put something in for a playground for kids to play because we lost our playground because that's where the construction is, but we didn't want to invest tons of money into a playground that's, it's gonna be there forever, it's permanent, but it's not the playground, you know? Because the playground, well, I don't know exactly, maybe Peter knows this, but so after, you know, after we get the new building built and we're in, and then after the current Westridge, I say Westridge, that just shows all my, that dates me.
I knew what you were talking about.
The intermediate building is torn down, that site is where the new playground equipment will go. So so we're probably a good 2 to 3 years off on having permanent big time playground that's coming. So we purchased some affordable, all of us would understand it, it's old school, monkey bars, poles to climb, stuff like that. So it's, now they consider that fitness equipment. So we ordered fitness equipment, which we've talked about doing anyway, but that's what that flat dirt space is gonna be. We ordered it early in the summer. It's not here yet, but they're telling me September 7th is the shipping date. So, and then we're gonna have a bunch of volunteers. We're gonna put it in, so it's not ready for school to start. We wanted it to be. Shipping's just tough right now, so. Anyway, so that's, in case anybody asks you guys what's going on, there's gonna be places for kids to play. We've moved them over to the parking lot for hard surface. Kids are separated. I had that question a few times. The intermediate kids aren't gonna be playing with the 5-year-olds, you know, so that was a question that I had, so some of that's coming up. They have ample, we're so lucky that we have so much green space. You know, we have so much open area for kids to go run and play, and we've got it separated out. So, but there's a few hiccups until we get our equipment in, and then we'll have a good place for them to play. It's gonna be a little muddy for a couple times. We'll get the grass grown in. That's gonna get hydro seeded this week, I think.
Yep.
So, anyway, just a couple of tidbits that you guys might be
that's good.
interested in.
Yeah.
Steven, do you want to talk about facilities update?
Yeah. Most of you have 2 documents here. There's one for each of our active projects. These will be distributed on a monthly basis. So we have issuance 1 and issuance 3. We'll talk through those, and then we'll give a brief update on the issuance 2 progress we're making for the rebid that's coming up here. But we'll start with issuance 1. Things are going very well in the auditorium. We're a little ahead of schedule, I'd say, right now. We're going to hold our current substantial completion date, but things are progressing well. The ceiling has been completely refinished. They're working on what we call MEP trim out, which just means finalizing the light fixture rings that go on the ceiling to make it look nice. They've got everything painted. They are sandblasting right now, which is a little ahead of our sequence of events we had planned. We thought the scaffolding would come out first, but it actually worked out where he can get in there just fine and there's not a lot in his way along the walls. So sandblasting is going to occur all week. They actually expect that to be done this week, which is like 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So what that does for us is that it makes us have to resequence some of the other trades that had already planned on certain dates. So that's what we're working on now to try to take advantage of the schedule jump. Worst case scenario, we'll stay on schedule, but we're going to try to advance it a little bit to give the auditorium back. It's really all hinged on the seating coming in. We can go as far as we want with everything else, but unless you have seats, it's really not usable. So we're working with all teams to see if we can't bump things up a little bit, but for everything else, it's moving very well. You'll notice this gives you a good snapshot of just the financial impact for that specific project. So you'll note that the credit change orders that were processed, you know, these were a couple months ago, so those have already been realized a while back, but we're working under our contracted value, which is nice. In terms of what's coming up, we'll continue with sandblasting. Scaffolding starts to get torn down on Monday, so that'll be removed next week. And then really Baiting and Nelson will finish out what they need to do on the ground level. So getting things trimmed out, getting the walls sandblasted then painted, and then getting the flooring ready for the seats to come in. After some of those messier components are done, like the sandblasting and paint, we'll start to talk sequence for the new stage curtains coming from Omaha Stage Equipment and get that scheduled, because once they're off the stage, the seating doesn't impact that, so you'll see a couple of those teams working at the same time. So auditorium's going great. We do have a couple risk issues we like to highlight. One of them is the stage restroom, which was not on the plan. They're going to go ahead and sandblast and paint that just under the current contract, so we don't need to worry about it. One item we do need to worry about is the flooring, which is hot. It's the less than 1% containing asbestos. So we're working with the Shive Hattery team to figure out how that just gets cordoned off by itself with plastic instead of shutting the whole construction site down for what'll end up being like 6 hours of work to get that up. So we're gonna get that just pulled into the current contract, knowing that the asbestos portion of that work can be refunded to the school, and try not to have any additional cost come in from the paint and sandblasting, which as of right now we're gonna be good on. So everything else will just stay as it is in that restroom. The fixtures aren't incredibly old, but they're certainly not new, but they can get cleaned up and we'll see how they look. We'll work with Mike in case he wants to just throw a new toilet in or something like that. We can work with him. So, and then I don't know, how far everyone's been in depth on the roof leaks, but we've had some leaks here or there. Some of them just come with the fact that water is being pushed off of the new roof area that's not leaking anymore and could be exacerbating older areas that are still leaking. Had some flashing issues we've worked with, but we think we've addressed a lot of those with Jason and team here on site. So things have been going well with Elevate. We've identified, Travis has been good about walking around. Travis, our superintendent, has walked around whenever there's been a big rain with Mike, tried to identify any new ceiling tiles. A lot of them have been in older areas that seem to be exacerbated now, but they're areas that will get replaced just on a different phase. So we're working through that, but he's been in touch with Mike after every rain just to make sure we're staying on top of it. So no huge concern there. Just want to make sure we're staying on top of areas we need to address. In terms of school operations, obviously we've got a big date coming up here on Wednesday where kids will be back in school. It doesn't change a lot with the auditorium work. Really what it comes down to is us making sure that personnel are following the rules, and then that any loud work is coordinated well with Casey and team. The only thing we can really think of that's going to be loud will be the seating install. They're going to be hammer drilling anchors down into the floor. That will be loud. We might test a few, see if it's disruptive. We can always change our schedule, especially if we get a little bit of lag baked back into the schedule, which will help us not delay things. So if we need to focus on late afternoon for them to get those anchors in, it'll just be something we work closely with your team and Casey on once we get started. So that's all we can really think of with that specific portion of the project. Sure. You'll see the same kind of snapshot at the bottom left there called the program budget. The only thing really to note is what you're seeing is a plug for the issuance 2 work. That's higher than what we have budgeted, but that's what we feel is being a little bit more realistic based on how some of the numbers came in. Granted, that's higher than the bonded amount. What we've put in there is what we're calling a finance plan modification, where, as we've discussed, a no tax base impact. It would just be changing how things are financed going forward with the bond, to try to add the funds that we are seeing may be required come bid day. Granted, we don't know what the bids will be, but as an issuance 2 update after we get through the issuance 3 construction update here, we'll note we're hoping for a much more competitive showing come the bid letting, just based on our new schedule. So knowing that we're bidding this and having a bid day in October for work that's not going to occur till May, we felt our biggest issue with that bid, the previous bid, was the fact that a lot of the teams already had work filled up. And this, we're going to get ahead of that and hope that we have the shiny project that everybody wants to go after for next summer. So you'll just note that one line item that kind of makes up the variance. It's like a credit variance on this view to get you back down to what we had as the bonded amount, the bonded budget, which was $32 million. Any questions specific to issuance 1 on the auditorium piece, anything like that?
Jim, nothing?
I would ask, is the interest favorable in that contingency, in that finance plan modification?
Yeah.
We've actually had preliminary discussions actually with Piper Sandler, thank you, this last week, and we're gonna look at it real strong when we get a couple weeks down the road here, but they're thinking right now that the interest rates, honestly, Jim, the first borrowing, the GOs, we actually got a better rate the second one, believe it or not. And for that reason, they're thinking to go ahead and lock in this revenue bond. And again, they're gonna kind of, the next couple of weeks, kind of feel out exactly where we're gonna be. They're leaning towards, with the funds, what they're leaning towards actually doing is we have enough reserves in the penny where we could actually not have to go out and borrow that. What they're tending to believe right now with the interest rate we're getting on what we're earning, that it might behoove us to go borrow it, and then
I see.
and then
Interesting.
we'd actually be picking up some interest.
What's the number on the next issue?
It will be the revenue bond, and that revenue bond will include enveloping our old revenue. Okay, I'm gonna say this, yeah, what they're gonna do is they're gonna look at, should we keep our old revenue bond and just keep paying it like it is and borrow the new revenue bond, or should we get them all under one roof? Right now, with where the rates are at, I think they're leaning towards putting them all under one roof. Okay, but again, they're going to look at this in a couple of weeks and see where things work out, and then I'll know more next month.
And the approximate amount of that, is that around 10 million yet left?
Okay, I'm going to do this from
Just
memory because I don't have it in
I'm
front
not
of me, but
holding you to
I
the
think
penny.
the new part would be 9.1, I believe.
Okay.
And I believe the old part would be 5 point something, and then dependent on whether we chose to go ahead and finance the overage, or if we just use district funds. They're looking at it from three different ways,
Okay.
essentially, if you follow where I'm getting at.
Yep.
Okay.
And that 9 point and the 5 point, that's million you're talking?
Yes. Yes.
Make sure I had
Yeah.
the decimal in the right place.
Yeah, you do.
Thank you.
So for issuance 3, that progress is a little more apparent while you're driving around town, as we've torn up that entire lot at this point. Things are moving very well with issuance 3 as well. We have gotten ahead with earthwork. McCarthy has been fantastic to work with. I can't say enough good things about their team, which has been great. As of right now, the earth is all but mass graded at this point. We've got a couple piles we're still getting rid of, but they're very close. They've started utility work already, so that's a key component. We're through the street to the south of the school. All we really have left that would technically impact something outside of the site is the water service that crosses Durant. However, we determined we're just going to bore that instead of cut the street up. So a little bit of change, but we made it a wash. We made sure it was a wash and not like an added cost, but it's going to save some time, going to save some logistical issues, knowing that kids are back in school. You just can't shut, I mean, that's a tough street to shut down. So we're going to bore under it and not have to worry about it. So that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. We are progressing well, so well with utilities and earthwork that we're getting ahead of ourselves with concrete, which is a key component to this, knowing that we have to have that done before cold weather. So that's kind of our what I would call critical path item right now is making sure we get footings in, because that then leads underground plumbing. You can't put that in until footings are in because you don't want to put it in the wrong spot. So a lot of dominoes that are going to fall into place quickly here in September. That are really going to push us to get what we need to get done before cold weather hits. One item I did want to touch on that's noted in the risks and issue portion of there. is the emergency egress for the primary school. This came up with CMBA. They notified us that the fire marshal had reached out about a second egress required for the current primary. So if you can picture the end of that building where we're going to connect to the new one, that is currently an egress point for the kids that would be in that wing of the school. Following conversations with the marshal, we've determined that there's 2 paths that we can satisfy their requirements. One will be what we call a fire watch, and it would be somebody that walks around the school in regular intervals just to check to see if there's a fire. That's literally what they would have to do. We're looking into what, if there's any certification or anything that needs to be behind that, which we don't think there is, but if it works out in our favor, we would just make Travis Crease the fire watch, and he would perform that in whatever interval he would need to. The other path is pretty simple itself. We don't have to add a door or anything. We would just cordon off with either snow fence or temp fence once we have it in, a section of that pathway back to the parking lot. So you'd essentially walk out that door. There'd be a fence in front of you that would, with signage on it that would point you, that would give you a pathway to the parking lot. And then once we had work to do in that area, we would just wait for summer and do it when kids are out of school, or Christmas break, what have you. That leaves us with the space we need to keep swinging steel and keep working on the building and everything on that front. But we were potentially looking at cutting a new hole in the building after that came up, and we don't need to do that. So it's one of 2 paths. We're still going to verify which route we're able to take, and then we'll propose that back to you. We're looking at very minimal impact in terms of what work would need to be done to satisfy that requirement. So I don't know if you had any other questions on that front, but
We just need to have a plan by Wednesday when kids get there.
so the plan of right now would be the fire watch to satisfy that immediate need, assuming we can. So I actually just got a call from Peter at CMBA. It's a little late, but we had a couple things we're waiting on. I'll verify with him right after this meeting what additional info he has. But the fire marshal basically told us, let's stick with the fire watch if you can do that. And Peter's just looking up the code to make sure we're good to go.
So how often would he have to walk?
It's a few times a day.
Okay.
So he'd just do a quick lap, and if it's any obvious issues, you have since your building's sprinklered and fire alarm, that's the reason we can go that route. If you didn't have those components, we could not go that route. So it's really just an added set of eyes beyond your very sophisticated sprinkler and fire alarm system. That just adds one more human element to the safety element to.
Okay. And then how long would it be until you got the fence in place? I mean, like how long are you talking about that he'd have to walk around the property?
We may not do the fence.
Okay.
So
Or
if the fire
whatever.
watch satisfies that, he needs to do that as long as work is impeding that door.
Okay.
So most of the school year.
Okay.
We would just bank on it being every day.
Every day
Yep.
for the school year?
Yep. And if he's
Okay.
not here, we'd find another designated fire watch for a backup. There's a few we need to have in place to make sure somebody's doing it. But there's a log we need to keep and all that good stuff. So.
Huh.
The anchor wall is going to be a pretty big architectural feature. Where does that sit?
The retaining wall?
Yeah, the block wall, the anchor.
That runs along the curb of the site. So if you can imagine pulling into the school, it's basically where you see the snow fence right now. There's going to be a retaining wall that comes from the berm at the front of the lot. That'll
Is that
run.
on this side here? I call it the north side. Oh, that side.
It'd be the west side of the school. So west side of the site will have a retaining wall that varies in grade.
What's the highest height of it?
Ooh,
Approximately.
don't quote me on it, but the highest point I think is 5 or 6 feet.
I see.
The lowest point comes down to grade.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing that in the plans. Maybe it was.
Oh yeah.
Did you guys talk about egress of the intermediate building?
Of the existing intermediate.
Yes.
The state fire marshal had no issues with our plan.
Okay.
So there were no comments on that side of it. Are there any concerns we should address?
Well, there's our current process for evacuating the building on that wing is out that north door. And so I just wanted to get clarification from the fire marshal to make sure but the windows are egress in that wing.
We are submitting a new, you'll have new egress plans.
Okay.
That is something you will have, will be new egress plans. So we can continue to use that north door of the existing primary, as your egress point with this new plan in place. No egress points truly change with either the fire watch or the cordoned off perimeter fence that we'd have in place for that aisleway. So you'd maintain your current egress pathway, whatever that looks like, with the intermediate school as well. Does that make sense?
So the kids, if we had, the fire alarm goes off, we can exit out the north door of the intermediate.
As long as we put up the correct signage, which is what we're working on CMBA with.
Okay.
So they'll have if there's any impacts to your egress plan, like the ones that are posted, they're going to be reposted with what CMBA is coming up with following the review of the state fire marshal.
If we're gonna use north, south, east, or west, I'm gonna need a diagram of
Fair enough.
where we're at.
So the north side is what's facing the high school, so facing Durant.
Okay.
Must have been related to my
There we go, okay.
There's just, I mean, this is one of my biggest concerns, because it's.
The egress.
Yep.
Yep. I tell you what, let me get a full summary pulled together and sent over to you tomorrow. So I'll
Right.
focus on that with CMBA and make sure I get the rundown with them to make sure I'm not missing anything. But
And I think it's corrected now, because when we had that 4-inch rain, I mean, it was a 3-foot lake.
oh yeah,
It was 3 foot deep.
that'll change quickly.
Yeah, and I think they already have changed.
Should be
so
graded now.
If we had the fire alarm go off right after a 4-inch rain, we're swimming.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's why I was just making sure. We've gone over our safety plans already at the building, and that's still a question mark. So.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I'll commit to following up tomorrow
Okay.
with like a summary,
That'd be awesome.
following a conversation with CMBA.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
I was gonna mention that there was a significant savings with
Yeah.
that change from the curved block to the straight. Aesthetically, it must not be that much difference, but you had a huge savings.
CMBA reviewed it. It has more to do with the labor side of it
Didn't we
than
look
anything
at
else. What's that?
Didn't we look at it?
Yeah, we brought it in a while. I mean, this was quite a while
I
ago,
thought
but
we
it was
saw
the
it.
Yeah.
back sheet. Yeah, those are the samples there. CMBA will pick from. I think there's also like an example photo, what it looks like up as a wall.
Yeah, there's a sheet in here.
Okay, yeah,
very
I thought
little
we saw it, yeah.
But that's a huge savings for such.
It's a good
small
chunk.
change.
It's a good chunk. We'd like to find a few more. So, yeah.
So they're that much, there's not that much difference in weight though, are they? So it's,
Well, it was a large block format before, so these would have been like 4 or 5 of those blocks make up one of the large block format. So it was actually a change in material specification to make it work.
Okay, okay.
But when they offered up that value engineering credit, we'll call it,
I see. Yeah, I was just looking at the straight versus beveled but it must be more to it than.
those are options with this style.
I see.
These were just a different block
They were
altogether.
huge. They must have
They
been.
were,
They were just, they aren't those huge, massive 3-foot by 2-foot blocks.
Uh-huh.
Those look really cool, but those are enormously expensive. These were retaining wall block, just a little, like the difference between utility brick and regular brick, give or take.
Interesting. Okay.
Similar to issuance 1, you'll see kind of a more concise snapshot of just issuance 3 here. You'll note that change being applied, granted, I think there's an agenda item here just to cover that approval, but we put it in, just assuming it gets approved. Just to show we are under contract values as of right now for both issuance 1 and 3. The change orders we bring to this table won't always be a credit, but so far so good.
You have the good work.
Keep swinging.
right.
And then, similarly with school operations, we'll stay in close contact with Jeff to make sure we're up to speed on all items, specifically this egress portion. We'll make sure we'll get him that summary tomorrow. And work on, we can have Travis post what needs to be posted temporarily for the interim while kids are in school. So
Are those little cones gonna be off the sidewalk that kids can get?
I didn't
So
notice them, but I'll
If
take
this
a look
is
on my.
north,
Yeah.
then this is what?
East.
East, okay. The kids walk.
This is north.
You just said,
This is north, west, east.
okay, listen. if this is the side of the primary school,
Yeah.
kids walk over on the intermediate school from 19th Street up, and there's cones on that sidewalk.
Okay.
So that will have to be,
I'll talk to Travis about
Thank
that.
you.
It might have been they're just bringing equipment in today and put them up.
Oh. Where they're fixing
Is that the
yeah,
utility side of
the-
stuff?
That's where,
The utilities
cause they
right
still
there on
had
the
to
street?
pour a little, they still have to
Maybe.
pour a little bit of a sidewalk.
no, it's up close to the church, but kids walk that every day.
You're coming up from 19th
Mm-hmm.
Street, there's a sidewalk that walks up. Did they get that all cement all poured in that?
I don't know if we were pouring anything today, so I don't know if this was somebody else or not. But
There's just cones there,
Okay.
and my
I'll go
boys
look
were
at
very
it.
concerned how they get up that sidewalk, so.
Yeah.
gotcha. All the sidewalks should be fully accessible,
Okay.
getting to the school.
Okay,
Okay. I'll
just checking.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter which direction it is, just.
Yes. Fair enough.
It's coming from the east.
There you go.
Any other questions on the issuance 3 piece? So far, we have a lot of, the submittal process is essentially when the contractors log onto our online database and submit shop drawings, product info. Basically, here's what we're bringing to the site, architect and de novo, please verify this matches your specifications. And then they order from that approval. So that's what triggers some of the long lead time orders for things like mechanical equipment and steel and things like that. So far that process has been going smoothly and we have not heard of any long lead time items that would impact the schedule that's been proposed. So our substantial completion date is still on track and has not had any impacts to what we're planning here.
Perfect.
Okay.
Did you wanna talk to Stephen about the new?
So with issuance 2, we are rebidding that on the 5th, so it's the day after Labor Day. That would then bid out October, it's like the second week of October. We're giving them 5 weeks to bid this. Leading up to that, our conversations over the summer have been talking to a lot of the contractors we were targeting during the previous bid that either let us know they didn't have time or their labor couldn't handle it, which was basically a cause and effect of us bidding this out in May and hoping to start in June. We figured out quickly that a lot of the contractors were already booked up, and those who we did end up getting bids from, we felt that there was potentially premiums tied to that work, and they were fitting into their schedules. We're bidding this out in October to now start next May. So same general phasing schedule, just starting a year late. We have had good conversations with contractors to date. Granted, you can't count your chickens till you hatch, but a lot of the feedback we've been getting is, yes, we're looking for a project for next summer. Now's the perfect time. So we're expecting a competitive bid day come October. So that's
So
our
are
goal.
we.
Yes.
So are we.
So we're trending towards that now.
That was a thinly veiled threat, I think.
That's all right. I wish I could write the bids myself. I would
I
gladly.
think it
do
was
so
very
for these
thinly
contractors.
veiled.
I'm just saying,
Yep.
we are too.
I would happily write the bids myself if I could, because I know we feel like we know what the project's worth here. But it has been received well, the new plan. So even some of the contractors that we really wanted to bid that just couldn't do it, they were honest with us, but kind of at the last minute, which made it tough for the previous bid. But we're trending well for October. So what we'll do is we'll provide what we call a bidder tracker, essentially, where it lists who we're going after, who we've been in contact with. Granted, anybody can bid, but it's who we've been in conversations with and providing updates on the project. We have a recap conversation with all the design teams, so CMBA, KCL, Raker Roads, and Larson here tomorrow afternoon, just to make sure we're all square with the minor changes to the plans, which would just have included like dates tied to the phases. And then we'll be ready to go with our specifications and construction documents here on the 5th. So those go back out to Beeline and Blue and back out to the contractor network for them to start downloading the new construction documents. Any questions on the rebid?
Sounds optimistic.
We are optimistic.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. And then now we've got Steve Savain, the Director of
I only have 5 minutes.
Education, and he is gonna give us a presentation here about
Take care.
I'll let you run
data.
the clicker button.
You want me to, okay.
Yeah. Now, the data that I'm going to share with you is district-wide, so 30,000 foot view. One of the things I was kind of tasked with when I came was, you know, in any school this size has similar issue, but we aren't 3 different schools within one town. We need to look at things at a district level of what's going on, look what our numbers are, because there are kids from the minute they walk into preschool till they walk across that stage when they're seniors. So we can go to the next one, Jenny. So some of my duties as Director of Education is starting to collect data in a longitudinal fashion. It's a tough word to say sometimes, but basically what I'm doing is trying to accumulate data so that we can have a snapshot of all of our grades as they go K through 12. Right now, we don't have a lot of that data available, so I'm starting to build it little by little. I think it's really important for teachers in the high school to know that, you know, the 4th grade class has historically struggled every year they've been in school. They're just a low achieving group. It's important that the high school teachers, middle school teachers know those trends and that. And guaranteed viable curriculum, GVC. I'm not going to make you become a curriculum director, but the things that we've been doing last year and this year, both in the elementary, middle school, and high school, is we're really going over the Common Core standards, and teachers have been picking out what they consider their essential standards, which are their high priorities. And in order for it to be an essential standard, it has to show endurance, meaning that kids are going to use this skill over and over in units of study as they progress up the food chain. And the readiness is, is it going to provide students with knowledge or skills that they're going to need in another class? And then leverage is that will assist them in other disciplines. And we've been working really hard with trying to get cross-curricular things done. So we can give a paper out in a science class that the English teachers can grade, and we try to do things cross-curricular a little bit. So how do we use data at Harlan? We use data to evaluate our existing programs and make decisions where we're going to target resources. Teachers use data to modify their classroom instruction to fit the students' needs better. Data is nothing more, though, than a snapshot of how the student is performing at a certain point in their educational journey. If you all think back to the days when you took Iowa Basic Skills Test, sometimes you were into it, sometimes you weren't quite, or we've got kids in the building that are hungry and they're not thinking about a test. We have kids that mom and dad had a fight, they're not thinking about that test. So we make sure that we look at things as a snapshot view. We look at the whole piece of the pie rather than just one thing. And also, data is never used for gotcha moments for teachers. Sometimes we want to say, well, how come that 4th grade group did struggle again this year? That's not what we're doing. We're trying to give you district-wide things. And we are building a strong culture of instruction. And what I mean by that is the culture, you can just feel it in all 3 buildings. That teachers are interested in building that culture of learning to do things the right way, just like the science of reading stuff that the elementary is doing. And then I'll get into a little bit of what the 612 staff is doing. This is the Iowa Professional Development Model, and I like this particular slide because of the ongoing cycle. One thing to keep in mind is we're always trying to do this. We're not just looking at data in the summer and basing our whole decisions on the whole school year. You know as well as I do, there can be a wrench thrown in anything, and we discover after the first fall grading period with fast tests that maybe we need to do something a little different. So that's kind of why I had that up there. Types of data I'm going to share with you. The ISAF scores are the old Iowa Basic Skills Test. And if you remember right, a few years ago, Iowa had the big controversy of they were not going to use Pearson, they were going to go to another provider. But the legislature required us to use an Iowa company. So Pearson is the name of the company that we use. This is the 5th year of the test, so it should become norm referenced, which means we can start looking at line item analysis of why kids are missing certain questions or concepts. So we look forward to hopefully that happening this year. And then the FAST scores, I'm sure you've heard Jeff talk about those before, and those are tests that we take kindergarten through 9th grade here at Harlan. And basically it's a formative assessment system for teachers that's used all across the country. And what we're doing is literacy. It's literacy focus. There is a math component to it, but we're not showing that data today. Okay, I'm gonna try not to confuse it. This is where I want to be a teacher again with my little red pointer. When you look at these charts that I'm gonna share with you, you're gonna think that I'm gonna go fast, but you're gonna have a copy of this presentation, so you'll be able to look at some of the scores more in depth, and I'll try to hit the high levels with you. When we look at the first charts on the FAST data, blue is the best, okay? College pathway, that means that kid has got it going. There's really no concerns that they're gonna slip. The neon green is what I call it. I tried to use 2 different greens. Those are our kids that are proficient. They're right in that alley where they're doing everything they're supposed to. They aren't overachieving, but they also aren't not proficient. And then the yellow is those kids that may test 1 or 2 periods and all of a sudden they get tagged with, hey, you need some extra help. And we like that group to stay as small as we can. And then red is non-proficient. And then the bigger column on the right there of those are classroom proficiencies or district-wide proficiencies. And it'll make more sense when I go to the next slide.
Are these percentages?
Yes,
Okay.
those are all percentages that are in there, and I'll try to explain them as we go through. Okay, this is our FAST district-wide, K through 9. And I chose to take the A reading component is the scores that I use. And the reason I do that, I guess as an old elementary principal, I was always pounded in my head, comprehension is so important, and that's kind of what the A reading is. So as you can see, in the fall of last school year, we had 58% proficiency as a district. And if we look at that, we always like to see that blue number bigger than the red number. It is, that's a good thing. We had 34% of our kids were in that good, pretty solid neon green, 29% that could fall through a crack and become a red, but they could also, with good teaching and good core instruction, move into that neon green group, is what we're hoping.
Can our IEPs fall in any of these percentage
Yes,
categories?
yeah, and I'll break them down.
Okay.
But this includes all of our students.
Okay.
K-9, IEP students, low SES kids, racial groups, everything.
Oh, okay.
And the nice thing about the chart is if you look into the winter, look, we went 10% higher of kids that are on that college pathway. That's good. Our red number got smaller. Our overall class percentage got higher, 63%. And then in the spring, we all know what it's like to be a kid in the spring. Schools across the state tend to experience that little spring drop, yes.
Do you mind if I?
Yep.
The test changes each testing
Yes.
period. I don't know, you probably said that already, maybe.
Nope.
So the test is more difficult in the winter than it was in the fall, and it's more difficult in the spring than it was in the winter.
Yep.
So the
numbers
test-
go up.
Yeah. So you're not comparing apples to apples.
Right.
It's not the same test
Right.
every time.
Yeah, it gets more
Right.
difficult. They expect more out of you each testing period.
Exactly.
The one on the far right is spring of '23, correct?
What's that?
The far right is spring of '23.
Yep,
Yes.
that's,
Yep.
you're right.
Well, yeah, because FAST always, the state refers to it as 22. And that's the way I cut and pasted stuff, so. That
Would-
gives you,
And 22
Would you still
until
say the
July 1.
standard loss of just general knowledge is like, is it upwards of 30% between the fall and spring, like, summer, I guess it'd be summer and spring.
The summer,
Yes.
the summer lull or whatever you want to call it. I think it's a real thing. Jeff's been in the business a long time too. I think some kids do. I think a lot of it has to do with what they do over the summer. If parents are asking your kids to read and be involved in the library program, those are the kids that generally don't show any drop in that. But we'll talk about kind of our low SES population and stuff like that in a minute. Okay, here's fast district-wide. These are just our low SES numbers.
Steve, what's SES?
Social economic status. Okay, so our basically free and reduced population.
Which is what percent of our school?
It's higher.
Okay,
The
before,
kindergartners. Oh.
before this year. What percent is
It's
that?
about 40%.
It's, yeah,
District-wide.
Okay.
district-wide if you average it.
And our elementary numbers are a little higher.
A little
But
higher.
what I was trying to show here in the fall is our low SES kids were only 51% proficiency compared to 69% of our general population, which included them. So the thing that I've been trying to impress upon, Jeff and his league team do an awesome job. They understand these numbers. At the middle school and high school, all three buildings are so close to being what we call a blue ribbon school. And all we have to do is bump some of these like low SES groups in that, and we start all of a sudden talking about classes that are 90% proficiency instead of the 71 and 80 that you'll see. So this just gives you an idea of how our low SES kids are not performing as well as our others. I know Jeff has addressed this with his staff down in that building, and one of the things that we're doing for professional development with our 6 through 12 is differentiation, which we just have to handle those student populations differently than what you used to. When I first got into teaching, they called Tier 1 or your core instruction. You threw out a blanket over the class, and if it covered 70% of the kids, good job, move on. Okay, that doesn't work that way anymore. Okay, that blanket has gotten smaller or something like that, so we've got to make changes. Okay, next one. This is our data district-wide for females, overachievers. They went from 52 to 72% proficiency district-wide by the end of the school year. Look at that blue number. I think I heard my dad telling me, how come your sisters do so well in school? But you can see, look at those small red numbers. All very good. Then we go on to the boys. And they're setting 50, 53, 54. They went up, but notice their red numbers are higher. The thing that's really encouraging about this, you went from 20% down to 11% of non-proficiency in that group. And we had a nice big solid 26% of those kids that were a college pathway in winter. Okay, next group, these are, you talked about IEP kids. These are IEP kids. Please do not be concerned about the red number being high. These are kids that have a learning disability and they just aren't as high achievers as a regular population. So you can see the thing that's encouraging to me is we still have blue kids, IEPs. Just because a kid maybe doesn't get reading very well, he can be a math whiz. So that's why you see some of those things. The black number that I have there is the total number of kids on IEPs within the district. And again, you'll be able to look at these a little closer after I go. Okay, here's our racial minorities. And again, we didn't start out very well at the beginning of the year, but look at the end. And I would really like to put a plug in for Anna Gill. She does an amazing job with our kids, our ELL kids, and those are a lot of our kids that are in our racial minority group. I've been in this business for 41 years. You have to celebrate 34 to 68. Whoever's handling that group of kids, whether it's at the elementary or high school, it's amazing. It really is. I get the privilege of, I guess, kind of overseeing her, so I get to see her in action a lot. She does amazing stuff with those kids.
I know when she came last and spoke, and then she had 40 or 50 kids, and you guys were like, oh my gosh, how does she do that by herself, and shouldn't she have a para? Well, we did find a para for her that's bilingual,
That's
and I mean, that might be right there, part of
She's
the.
amazing too.
her
Did she
parents
come
are
from the
awesome.
intermediate?
Yes.
Yes, we stole her from the elementary, but she still
Cecilia.
gets to work with them down there.
You're fine.
But,
She's a
She's
sweetheart.
amazing,
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I just, that makes a huge difference too. Anna, and then having a little bit of help gave her, so, thank you for that.
Yes, she does
for reminding me of
amazing
that.
stuff and her kids are scores.
I thought that she was.
Okay, we're at
She's in a
district-wide
perfect spot.
scores. We're shifting gears now. We're going to our state assessments. And I would like to give a shout out to all 3 building principals. You guys, kids test amazing, you really do. You're gonna look at some of these numbers and you go, we don't have any problems. But I think you can see just from this first one, this is our district-wide ELA scores. 81% of the kids in this district are proficient.
English language arts, so reading.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
All those acronyms, we need like that. But 15% of our kids district-wide are advanced, 66 are in that nice solid green proficiency, 19% are not proficient, and 81%. And I'll talk a little bit later about, I guess I can say it now, I think in all the scores combined in ELA with all of our grades, we are almost 11.6% higher than the state average. Something to be very proud of. Okay, next group. These are our district-wide scores in math. Again, 77% proficiency, that's wonderful. Most of the schools that I worked with when I was at the AEA in the north, they would celebrate if they were at 60 or 65% proficiency. Okay, so 77 is wonderful. We would like to see that blue group get a little bit higher. I think one thing that when I look at Jeff's data, they implemented a new curriculum through the 3rd year. Last year was?
Last year was the 2nd year.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be the
Which
3rd, yes.
you should have saw a bump, and he did see a bump in his math scores, so we hope we see a little bit more of a bump this year. And that's on our curriculum cycle too, which I'll get in a minute about maybe doing that curriculum all the way through. Our science, statewide science scores are down, and part of the reason I think we can blame just the current climate of what's happened in schools. Everybody is focused on literacy, 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 and we kind of forget that we have to teach science and social studies too. But still, 76% is wonderful.
And science is given to,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade.
Isn't that mainly comprehension?
It's a lot of reading involved. They have
there's
to
a
read
lot
passages.
of graphs and tables and
Okay.
different
Yes.
things. You have to know how to read a table and a graph and,
Okay.
Yeah.
and
It's
analyze
very
some
literacy
data.
based.
I thought
Yeah,
it was a lot
it is.
of
It's
comprehension.
And I
Yeah.
think this one was the highest. I think we were almost 15.6% higher than the statewide average in science. And I would attribute a lot of that to your kids score so well in English.
I think the state average is right around 51%.
Yeah,
It's crazy how low it is.
it is.
At least at the elementary, I don't know about.
Very
the-
concerning. Okay, is this the next one? District-wide ELA low SES, so just the English test, just our low SES kids. Disappointing part is we'd like that blue number to be bigger. I like the 64% proficiency there, but that only gets us to 68, which is just a smidgen short of that 70% or above that we'd like to see. The district's been proactive. A few months ago, you okayed over $100 and some thousand for a new English curriculum, and the high school is using some new curriculum this year too. So we hope, and through differentiation, that we can reach those low SES kids a little bit better. Okay, district-wide scores for our females. Overachievers again. The only thing that would even a little bit concern me is that 30%, 33%. When we looked at some of their other scores, they tested a little higher, who knows? Okay, next, there's our males.
They're really similar, aren't they?
They are similar.
Yep, very similar.
So
The
that
boys-
first test, the fast is more of a screener, so you take it real quick and it's just kind of a snapshot in time and it's pretty quick. This is an actual test where you're sitting down and answering questions and doing, so there's a little bit of a difference in those two.
There is.
You know, 10 years ago or so, when we were looking at these numbers, it seems like the number of 41% was the schools in need of assistance. Is that still a kind of a thing that's out there? That
I haven't seen a recent number.
It was such a big deal back then.
They've kind of changed that whole thing where
It's all
they
your
say
state
you
report
are.
card now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on this, and the 40% was you had to get at a score of 40%
Right.
in
Or else
order to
you
be
did.
considered proficient,
Yeah,
which
the Department of Education would come in and kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
swoop in. And,
if you had a certain
Yeah,
amount of
right.
kids that were under that,
Yeah.
under that
But these-
non-proficiency.
great.
And that
It's
still happens.
It still happens,
the
but
report
there
card.
isn't as much hand slapping and that as there used to
So
be.
you're targeted or, yes, that does
Yeah.
happen.
It's just
And-
shaming now, they put it in the Wayne register.
Yeah.
It's not hand slapping, it's just
Yeah, there you
shaming.
go.
And it is mostly based on the subgroups. So like if
Yes.
your low SES subgroup was way down, then they may
Because
look at you.
there's no way to keep a direct correlation between schools because our amount of our interracial or whatever those acronyms are, that's not the same as your WACs and
No,
different
but
places.
if our proficiency level, like say of students with IEPs, if it was not as good as it is, and only 10% of them were proficient and 90 were not, then we would be on the targeted list. So
Okay.
there is a level, but they pull those groups out.
Sure.
But they use percentages, like you said.
But,
Okay.
you know, if we look at our, what,
Even
40%
if
pre-reduced, some of those districts are
Oh,
70 and 80.
yes.
Right,
Yes.
that's, yes, that would be,
Yeah.
Not Waukee.
No,
No.
no.
no, not WACI, but I
They even
mean,
do some of that through Part B now
Right.
too.
Yeah.
CEIS.
Yeah.
And this is our district math low SES. And again, 67% is really not terrible at all. It's still above state average. This is our district-wide scores for math, females. Research will tell you that girls don't tend to do as well at math historically.
well, they lie.
They did well here, very well. There's our males, and boys tend to do better in math historically. I don't want to come across the wrong way, but that's usually how we see things play out. And got a nice solid blue number there for our boys, which is good. Okay. These are our science low SES numbers. And you know, when we start talking about like low SES kids, boys, what do they like to do? They like to do hands-on things and they need to be moving. Okay? So we need to find out as a district how we can reach those kids a little bit better. We need to do more hands-on things. I happened to go to that STEM convention this summer, and the head of the Governor Reynolds group that runs STEM, he's an old science teacher, and he was telling stories about when he was a science teacher, he did labs every day and how well the kids scored in his class. And he goes, it's the only thing that saved my life. I had one teacher in high school who did some hands-on stuff for me, and that here's why I am today. So,
And
good
this
thing.
is given at 3rd, 5th, and 8th
Eighth
grade.
grade.
So you're not even getting to the point where you do labs. So middle school does labs a little bit. Science, again, like Jeff said, the focus is on literacy and math, so you only have so many hours of the day. So how do you do more hands-on?
And you'll hear me talk at the end here about we just need to start getting kids more interested in trades type things. Hands-on stuff, they make a lot of money. Okay, district-wide scores for our science, our females. Again, a little bit lower than what our average was before, but we got a pretty good solid number in that neon green. Here's our males.
It's 2 in a row, Jay.
I'm feeling it.
That's the only streak. I'm part of that group,
And
so.
part of the-
And I wanted to end, Dr. Barnett wanted me to talk just a little bit about Portrait of a Graduate. We're kind of bringing that back to the forefront a little bit, and not a little bit, a lot of it. And with the help of the AEA. The AEA still wants us to be that model school for the Portrait of a Graduate. So what we're doing is, Dr. Barnett has put out a notice to the teachers. We're trying to get about 4 or 5 teachers that are passionate about this sort of thing, and they're going to work with Andrea Danker who's our school improvement person, and Chad Bartlett, who kind of sees the whole big data picture for the whole AEA. And they're going to work with them, and we're going to start with the academically prepared student, which we did last year. We surveyed our kids and asked them about, share with us some positive experiences you've had in the classroom with teachers. That should be fun for the teachers to watch, because a lot of them got named about what they enjoyed in their classes. And then what we'll do is we'll replicate that system that we do this year, and we'll attack all 4 of those competencies then. The biggest thing that they're going to have to work on is, how do you measure those things? How are we going to know that a kid's academically prepared? We're going to have to figure out how we can measure that, and to make sure that even our kindergarten teachers are preparing for our kids that walk across the stage one day. They have a big role in that. Okay? And again, I think I already talked about most of this stuff. So we had a very interesting speaker at SAI this year that I've really been following. And I went to his follow-up, and he talked a lot about our Gen Z kids. And I have kids that are Gen Z kids, and I've always been fascinated with how kids are wired, but he assured us that this is the smartest group of kids to ever come through the country. And he said they're the why generation, so they always ask why. They have more access to the world through their phone than I ever had with Encyclopedia Britannica. But we have hired 2 wonderful STEM teachers focused here at the school. So Sarah and then Kylie Lewis. And we got to get going on that stuff. If we don't, we're going to be way behind people. And the AEA is pushing us. When I went to that STEM deal, like I said, that he came up to Sarah and I, and he goes, "I hear Harlan's our next hot spot." And I said, "Yes, it is." So we're going to try to get that rolling. But here's some kind of scary stuff that he threw out. 1/3 of our top scoring students in our nation do not obtain a college degree, but do enroll in college. 1/3 of our best kids never graduate. I can think of a lot of kids that I've taught over the years that did not make it, that were super smart kids. 34% of students believe they will graduate with the skills necessary to be successful in the workplace. We'd like that number to be a little higher. 40% of all college students drop out. That's also taking into consideration 2-year degrees too. It's our priority to prepare Harlan students to be prepared for whatever they need. Not all kids need a 4-year college degree. 2-year college degree, associate's degree, trade school, apprenticeships, and we've brought in Avenue Scholars. We've got all things. Dr. Kinney at Iowa Western is chomping at the bit to do what we need. We just need to supply them with the kids to take the courses. And that's not going to happen overnight. You have to turn kids on to that in the elementary and middle school, that, hey, I'd love to do this. I love to work on Dad's lawnmower or whatever. So that's what we're trying to do. And we have a strong working I already said that, with Iowa Western. And we are now a STEM best school, and they made it very clear when we went to that symposium this summer. Once you are a STEM best school, you move to the top of the list when it comes to any grants that are available. And there is millions and millions of dollars available for STEM stuff. And Jeff has a wonderful opportunity with a new building to make some makerspace stuff, virtual reality labs, all that sort of stuff we can get free. But now that we're a STEM best school, and we look forward to working with our 19 business partners that are part of our STEM planning grant. We're going to do that one, and we were part of a community grant with Jim Shelton that was like a nationwide grant, and he made the final cut down to 30 communities, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll be part of that. Okay?
Any
That's it.
questions? Do you guys have any other questions? I mean, we asked along the way. Thank you, Steve. This
Yeah.
is a lot of work, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay, now it's your turn.
Okay, here we go. We go to the action items, right? Okay, we start out with action item 1, personnel report.
Had some movement this last month. I feel like people wait till the end of the year to resign their positions, so we kind of scramble and we kind of expect it. So we've had a couple of resignations, but we've also had a few hires, and actually this has changed quite a bit since I posted it on Thursday. So we're currently full in the kitchens. We have a few paras that we still need to hire, but other than that, we're looking pretty good. We still have a couple of coaching positions also that are open, but all in all, we're okay. We have a few subs helping us in the para roles at the beginning of the year, and so we're just short a few paras, and we're gonna get there. Hopefully, we'll have.
So what do you have? 1, 2, 3, 5 paras resigned.
It's kind of like my business, the first day of work, if you can get them to show up the first day. It's never given.
Are all our certified positions
They've been.
filled?
We've been doing we were pretty much good to go. We had an opening that we were maybe gonna fill just for large classroom, but we decided, I don't know, June, that we weren't.
What grade's that?
We were gonna hold them.
Four.
We just
Did they go smaller? Did they go from 4 to 3?
No.
No, we had 4,
Okay.
but we were looking at going to
To
5.
5, okay. I have a kid that grade, so I don't wanna know. Got it.
No, we didn't go to 3.
Well,
Yeah.
but weren't they at 3, like they got to 4? I don't, doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on.
I will say too, Anthony is actively working on finding coaches and working with our new teachers to see if they're available to coach for some of these, which you'll see.
I would say the cross-country would be the most imperative one right now.
Well,
And I think he's got one.
Yeah,
He does.
and
What-
it
what
was
is
just,
that?
it's a good problem to have because
We're
our
adding-
numbers are so
Yeah.
large.
We're adding an additional
Yeah.
assistant because
This year, I
there's-
think they said was one of the larger cross countries
Yeah.
they've had in a long time.
Excellent.
Yeah. So no, I think that's already happening.
You have,
I think
okay.
that
Good.
maybe the papers haven't been signed yet.
Yeah, yep,
Yay,
just need to cross some
Yeah.
Ts and dot some Is.
perfect.
So
Yeah.
no certified. Okay. Any more questions?
Would someone like to make the motion?
So moved.
By Jay to approve the personnel report. Second. Second by Joe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Next, we have action item E2, construction change order. And perhaps you could explain this, Al. I think you talked about it a little bit.
I don't know that I'm going to explain it, other than to say that the document about the construction change order just needs a signature from the architect, if I understand right. So it looks like it would be something that we could approve contingent upon that signature. It's a good number anyway, so. Does that kind of say what it is?
That's exactly what it is, and we were supposed to have that today and didn't get it in time. So it's basically a change order to save us $44,000, so.
I would move that we, that change order contingent on that signature from CMBA.
Yes, you did that so well, Al. Second. Thank you. Did we get a second on that? Got that by Greg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Next, we have the Council Bluffs Consortium Agreement 23-24 school year.
So again, this is, we did it last year as well, to just, Children's Square and Harlan Family Service are two special schools for students with IEPs and special needs, that if they have needs that we aren't able to have a program for, they get their needs, or they, can't talk. They get their education at Children's Square and Harlan Family Service, and a lot of that is more on the behavioral side or the mental health side. And they are housed in the Council Bluffs School District, so every school that sends anyone there, or even might send someone there, just joins this consortium. It's no money, it's just saying we have to join, and it's just a Department of Ed thing.
How many do we have?
We currently have one at Children's Square, and we just got a new student from another city just moving in that will be attending Harlan Family Service. We also have 2 at Alpha School, which is in Omaha, and 2 at Bellevue, or Boys Town, I'm sorry, which is also in Omaha. But we don't have to do this consortium with them because they're considered out of state.
So 6 total kids.
6, yes. And we transport all of those students, along with the students that go to Iowa School for the Deaf. So that's quite a few in the last couple of years that we've had to transport. So if anyone's interested in being to work for
Route driver.
transportation and work for a route driver, please let us know.
So does the person stay?
Nope, they drive down and back, and then
Drop
they go
off,
back
and then they go back.
yep. And sometimes we're able to put a couple kids in the car together, or like the Children's Square and Heartland aren't that far apart. So depending on the child's needs.
So how many per day? How many different
Routes?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't tell you how many because I think he's putting some together, but
Okay.
it probably at least 4,
4 a day
1,
Yeah.
2, 3,
4,
4,
5,
potentially 5.
5.
every
Do
day.
they get bus driver pay or something like that?
They get route pay, yeah.
Have to have a chauffeur's license.
They just have to have a chauffeur's license, so you don't have to have your CDL.
I got a suggestion for you, Catherine.
What's that?
So, I'll give you a name to maybe check with.
Oh.
Sure.
Okay.
What do you
Might be
think
Awesome.
the average per kid is to bus them out daily
Oh,
to these?
oh, well, Brian can tell you that, but then each of these has a different daily rate that you pay, anywhere from $180 a day up to $220 a day.
Per school.
So we
Yeah.
also have the therapeutic classroom that we house here from the AEA, so Rising Hope Academy, which one of the reasons that we agreed to do that is because we are allowed a student there free, tuition free, which is very, I mean, so add $220 a day, and we don't have to transport them. So that saves us money as well. So that's one of the reasons we said we would house them here. But Brian, what's like a route?
Okay, so just typically speaking, you're talking, it takes, they go down and back and down and back.
So 2 routes.
So it's probably about 4 hours, depending on where they go. Boys Town's a little more, but it's probably 4 hours a day, and I think they get $22 an hour, is that correct? Okay, so it's 88, plus you're gonna have FICA and IPER, so you're gonna have about $100 a day on the driver. And then if you figure your actual fuel costs and everything, it's running 40 cents a mile.
Personal vehicle or school vehicle?
Those are all school
School
vehicles.
And then
We-
the
we
tuition
really-
for them to
We
spend.
actually are about maxed out on school vehicles. We've had one ordered for over a year, and it's supposed to come in hopefully this next month. But right now, we're maxed.
Is there usually a time where these kids transition back into?
It depends
more
on which
general-
program it is. So I would say, like right now, we have one student who's at Alpha that is transitioning back. The Boys Town ones usually transition back within, I would say, a year or 2. They do their best to try to, depending on the needs. Heartland oftentimes is a bigger need, so it just depends on if you can, and it's much more wraparound services, so it's, their focus is more mental health than it is academics, if that makes sense. So there's maybe 60% of the day are working on mental health issues and 40% are academics. So when they reach when they outdo their need for mental health and can do that, then we would definitely work with them. But we do have to have a special ed teacher that's assigned to them. So they're involved in their whole IEP process and everything. So
Are any of them high school age now?
we do have a couple high school age.
And this form is pretty much a standard form that you have here.
Yep, yep.
Very good.
I don't see that number going down though, do you?
No, and we're doing our best at the elementary, but what we are seeing is just different kinds of behaviors, even in the preschool. And I think the COVID kids that weren't able to socialize as much, and just that you just seen different behaviors. So, and that's where it goes back to Steve talking about differentiation and figuring out how to work with them maybe in a different way than we have in the past.
I think it's financially alarming a little bit.
Oh,
Because
yes.
we will have no choice but to provide this. So do we budget that somehow? Do we think
It's-
of these numbers in terms of,
I'll let Brian speak to the special ed budget in general.
well, I know
but-
we never make up the deficit, but
Well, I mean, your sped deficit is a lot determined by the mix of kids you have.
yeah.
And understand one thing, Jade, there's a lot of, in special ed, there's a lot of, I'm gonna use the word transient, where you have, they go from district to district to district.
Oh, okay.
And especially when you're talking heavy hitter, when you have a heavy hitter, you may be sending them to an out-of-state someplace. So,
Well, we don't get
This-
to even send those out of state, so that's another population of kids that we
right,
we get charged the academic piece, but they may be residential and live in Minnesota or
or Missouri.
Texas or Missouri.
So-
They get
so-
placed either by their parents through insurance or even adjudicated, but we still are billed the educational piece
Yeah.
for them.
To answer your question, we budget as well as we can, what we think
Yeah.
our sped deficit's gonna be. Our sped deficit, we actually do something, it's called a predictor. Now, it's not foolproof, because if you get 3 heavy hitters move into your district, it's not gonna work. But ours is projected to increase slightly almost every year.
Just curious.
It's kind of scary, actually.
It is a little overall interesting.
Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the consortium agreement?
So moved.
So moved by Joe,
I'll second.
second by Al. All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Aye. And those opposed, no. Next, we come to the policy review, the legislative changes, and this might be a good time to mention, because we're talking about laws and stuff, that there is an election coming up this fall. And I hate to tell you, but unfortunately, there are 4 members that are going to be, three, yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, Al, Joni?
No.
Al. Okay, Joni,
Joe, and
Joe,
Joe.
and
Monty.
There you go.
Okay, get the right 3. That are going to, I guess they've decided not to stay on the board, and so we're looking for good candidates in those districts to come up and step up. And I know the pay is so great that there'll probably be a lot of people, but I think publicly we want to say we really appreciate your service. It's been such a pleasure. I think we'll all say that, working with the board and everything. So I think it's a good time to mention that. And any comments about that? Or could be talking and staying.
Yeah.
When I decided to run, they didn't say you had to be good.
Is the window open now?
The window is open and you can come grab paperwork from us or
Good point.
email Catherine.
September 15th, right? But
Actually, I told you wrong, Jim.
Okay.
It's the 21st,
Okay.
which we have that's another week
Okay.
for us. 50 signatures,
Mhm.
and then there's just the legal paperwork, but need to have names by September 21st so they can be on the ballot and ready to go by November.
If I'm not mistaken, it's anybody who lives outside of the city limits.
Yes, you three are on the outside of the
Right,
city limits.
or the country
yeah.
ones.
The
for the
country
most,
ones.
that's
yeah.
for the most part. There is a little bit of, on Joni's
Yeah.
especially, there's a little bit.
I
You
covered a
definitely
little
want
bit.
to check the
Yeah.
lines if you're talking around.
Right, because they have to be from the district that they live in, so
Yeah.
people need to look
So
that
if somebody
up.
is thinking about it, they could come and talk to Catherine.
Oh, sure.
And get those exact boundaries and see
Yep.
what
Yes,
district they
yes.
would.
We have lots
We
of
have the
information.
maps. Yep.
Okay, in regards to this item E4, policy review, July legislative changes, it's been suggested that Catherine made the notes. About 2 weeks ago, we had our meeting and we talked about a lot of the changes, and we'll welcome anybody's input, but maybe Catherine will run through them and tell us what they are. I did want to show you a little joke before we do this. This is a cartoon. How many ducks do you see, Joni?
Well, too obvious.
2 ducks. But one duck said to the other duck, you should have told me you were a decoy. So I thought this is a little bit appropriate to these legislative changes because our superintendent had a piece in the newspaper about the mixed signals that we sometimes get in regards to these. They say the board is supposed to make the decisions locally, but so much of this is handed down from the state. And if I hear anything from people on the board is that we really are trying the best we can to follow the laws of the state and the Board of Education. And that drives a lot of our decisions. You know, maybe we tweak a word here or there, but we're pretty much have to go by what they say. And I want to give a good shout out to the superintendent and the administrative staff, because that's really walking a tightrope in many of these instances, and it takes somebody that's very reasonable to figure out what's the best way to handle these things. And you know, we read these for a half hour or 45 minutes before the board meeting, but I guarantee Superintendent Barnett and Catherine are sitting there with double screens going through every word and trying to figure out how they're going to impact situations as they come up. And that's not easy, especially when all these ideological lawyers are putting kind of a culture war on our steps, and so we have to figure those things out. I hope that's fair to say.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know how much you want to kind of go over these again. I know that we've had several meetings regarding the policies, and we've kind of just decided after much discussion that we're going to incorporate what the lawyers told us to do because it would be in our best interest. And I know, Joni, you were the only one in the room that wasn't at these meetings, so I don't know if you want to go through policy by policy.
Don't do that on my account. I mean,
Okay, so we can
We've
scroll.
already discussed.
I was just
I
gonna
know,
say,
I
yeah.
know. So I mean, I don't want to let you down, Jim, because I know that you asked me to kind of give a little synopsis, but a lot of the things we had in place already, the anti-bullying, and you'll see that it's all green, and it's just basically, it was just a lot of changes to the policy that we had, but we had a bullying policy in place, and we also, the next one is an investigative procedures. We already had those in place. So although it's all green, it's just a lot of semantics that were changed, just small words. Public participation in board meetings. I think Jay brought this up in a previous meeting, but basically in place. Citizens didn't have an opportunity to get something placed on the board agenda, and now they do. So this policy outlines how they can go about getting things placed on the agenda. Child abuse reporting, the only change here is that all staff above the age of 18 have to be mandatory reporters now, which is kind of a good thing. Required professional development for employees basically just says that we have to let them know what our professional development is going to be and why they are being asked to participate in that event. And we've always done that already. So again, a lot of these are just changes that are not changes to how we do things now. This new policy, 50307, is student disclosure of identity. And basically, and I don't want to say just, but basically if a student asks to
Be referred to.
yeah, change their identity and how they are at school, our certified staff need to call home and let them know right away within 24 hours that this request has been made. And then the next thing is a report and then a request. So lots of different forms there. Our graduation requirements, there's a few things on there that we yep, keep going down a little bit. Yep. That our board reviews this annually, which we already do. Prior to graduation, the district advised students how to successfully complete free application for and I think we already did that as well, right? So, not a lot of changes, just it's in writing. The two bottom paragraphs there in green, we don't have those programs, but our lawyer advised us to keep them in, just in case. The school calendar basically says that we can have 5 virtual days in our calendar now, or 30 hours of instruction. And that is for things like snow days. We can, if our teachers are prepared, we can do those, so we're not making them up at the end of the year. Just things like that. Health education, they took out the acquired immune deficiency syndrome out of the curriculum. Instructional material selection. I feel like we're already doing all of this. It's just putting language in there to make sure that we are reviewing materials and that we're following all of the laws. And so they put, you can see that's in 2 different space or parts of this instructional material selection. Then the next one also goes with selection of instructional materials, but also they're putting in that we're complying with all the laws. So that's put in there about 3 or 4 different times. Okay. Not a lot of, okay, so then instructional and library materials inspection and display. We've had a lot of conversation previously about our libraries selection of materials. We already publish all of our materials on the website, so that isn't a change for us. It's now in the policy. And then it goes through if we want to reconsider. This is a new policy, the reconsideration instructional materials regulations. So it just basically goes through if a parent or student want to
Challenge.
Thank you. Challenge a book. It's just the whole process.
But
And
that's
how
new,
it's
you
done.
have to be a parent of the district.
It is. Yep, you have to be a parent and it's no longer like a community member. You have to be a parent. Yep, thank you. And then basically how to do it. And it's not a lot of change from how we already had all that. But boy, there are a lot of words in there. It's a long one. It also talks about, at the very end there, Jenny, about that we need to post warnings about copyrights on like our copiers and things like that, which is, I mean, it's good to do. Student health services, basically, the legislative took away that we had to do comprehensive school improvement plans, so it's just taking the verbiage out of our already existing policy for that, which is nice. So that's those 2 policies. I think that's it. That's a lot.
That's it.
We had some really good discussion.
We spent hours. I mean, as a team, we spent lots of discussion.
Lots of green.
Oh, like you're right. We did sit with 2 different computers and go back and forth on them a little bit. In the end, I think we kind of decided as a group that we're going to stick with what the ISB lawyers recommend.
I did have a question on the reconsideration board there. I think the paperwork says that it's appointed annually.
So we clarified that, Joe. We asked, instead of having to look at that every single year and put different names in there, once you appoint someone, so like if someone challenges a book, then we would appoint someone and they have to stay on it for a year. So you're on it for a year. So then you don't have to keep making sure you have the right names in the policies. So that made sense after, but we had the same question that you did, so.
Yeah, one thing I found out is that you have the IASB lawyer on speed dial some
We do,
days, don't you?
yeah. We sent her an email today.
Yeah.
So.
Are we
Yeah.
doing this right?
Yeah,
Thank goodness
Or
for the
why are we
resource.
doing this? Yeah,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
why are
it's
we?
well worth the money to put in.
It is, yeah,
Good resource, right, Al?
yeah.
Absolutely.
What they're there for, help us out.
We should have had a policy.
Very good. Any more comments?
Good summary, Catherine.
Thanks.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
That's good though. I mean, I appreciate that.
So we need to do a motion to approve the first reading on this?
Yep, we're back at first reading.
I so move.
July.
We got Al,
Pardon me?
Joe
Oh,
as a
that's the
second.
July. Yeah, I'll second it.
Oh,
Sorry. I wasn't sure.
Hazelton.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. Okay, next we have the first reading. This is item 5, the policy review schedule. And this one starts with 603.01, basic construction program.
A lot of the changes in here, we're adding just the computer science component that is now mandated. And Steve's presentation, plus Jeff's got some keyboarding going, and we've got some things already in place, so we're ready to roll on that. We did just FY, go ahead.
You've got health for one. And you-
Yes,
Yep,
we
she's
saw
gotta take
that.
that out.
Is that what it was that you wanted to?
No,
But-
no,
We also.
I'll tell you later.
Our question to Siobhan at IASB is usually when you, for graduation, when you're enrolled 9 through 12, you have to take what they call 4-3-3. So 4 years of English, 3 of science, 3 of math, 3 of social studies. And this language does not match up to that. So I'm not sure what a unit is. If it's a semester, then that should be 8 units of English, 6 of social studies, I'm not sure. So we're getting that clarified with her. It just didn't make any sense. So we're getting that clarified, so we may have to come back to you, and if I do, once we get the answer, I'll put it in my board notes. But that was just something, just didn't make sense.
So would it make sense for us to approve a first reading if there's part of it that doesn't make sense, or do we just move a first reading to next month? I mean, there's no particular rush, right?
Seems to be a pattern.
I feel like we could approve, and if she says, yeah, this is the reason and it makes sense, otherwise we can take this one policy out and put it on.
And when it gets to second reading time and make it first again.
Yes.
I got
Yeah,
you.
we emailed her, but haven't heard back yet, so,
She's hearing from a lot of school districts.
yeah, I know she is right now, yeah.
She says it's her favorite part, so.
Summer school instruction, we provide it as needed, basically, for those students who might be a little bit behind. And special education, that's another thing that's out of our, it's up to the IEP team. So I think we had 4, how many did? 3?
Ended up having 3.
3
One
at the
called their
elementary
name, yeah.
level. Then we didn't have any extended year at the secondary level. And then these are just all special education things in here. The reason this has changed, I think, is because at one point you could write graduation requirements within an IEP, and now you cannot do that. They have to take the graduation requirements, the 4-3-3, like I said, at some level. So you can't just write an IEP as to what you think they should graduate with. They still have to have access to those core programs. Multicultural and gender fair education, that was no change. It's the same one we have. And then, except for the change was just this form, is that correct?
Yep,
Yeah,
form
okay.
change.
So if you as a parent want your child not to be involved in something related to, sorry, this is the next one, health and human growth and development, there's an excusal form. So you just have to fill that out and let us know which standard it is you don't want them to be a part of. And then the district will help come up with other ways of helping them to understand that concept. PE, just same as it always has been. Career education, religion, same thing. These are all stayed the same basically. So, I don't know, did anybody have any questions?
Who would like to make a motion?
So moved.
So moved that we approve the reading of the first reading.
First reading.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Al. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. So next we have item 6, the policy review schedule, second reading. And this starts with 404.04.
Oh, you didn't have many questions last time, so I don't know if you, did anybody come up with anything this time?
I move approval of second reading.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Next item is 7, the consent agenda. We don't have Brian here to grill, but we could always ask a question.
He did say that you can always email him, he just doesn't leave, but you have something, please email him.
I had one, did we really spend $5,000 on pizza? I think in.
What?
Is that in the P card?
Which one was
I
that?
don't think I might have circled.
Was that just a one-time bill for all, was it
I
concession
have no
stand
idea.
pizza?
It was Pizza Ranch.
I bet it was a
Yeah.
one,
Was
I
it
bet it's a
one-time bill for
one-time
multiple?
bill for
Okay.
multiple.
So we really did, we just didn't have one giant pizza party. And I missed it. So what I was really upset was I wasn't there.
Was that board meeting when you were talking about the dollars?
As many hours as you guys spent, you probably hope you got something.
That was one I checked too. That's a lot of pizza.
That's a lot of pizza.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do they usually don't they usually bill that more?
Regularly?
Yeah,
And that comes from them.
them, so,
So
yeah.
we just got it once. but-
yeah. Well, use their money.
I didn't know we had an open tab
Oh,
there.
for Clark.
Nice to
Oh,
know.
now everybody.
Someone like to make the motion?
So moved.
Got Greg on that. And the second?
Second.
Second from Joe. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. Next we have H, the adjournment. Anyone like to make an?
So moved.
So moved by Jade. Second,
Second.
Jody's on that. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I get you.